Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Yusuke collab. I know it's not actually called that, but it might as well be because he is the top prize by quite a long shot. So this collab kind of mirrors somewhat the Full Metal Alchemist in that there is one incredible chase card that becomes a phenomenal leader, but in the case of this one here, he's actually an incredible sub at the same time. Furthermore, we do have access to the trading post or the monster exchange system, which will enable us to trade out 4 6-star Godfest exclusives and or collab rolls for a specific card of our choice. Now, that particular notion will be covered in a separate article and video, but this one will be reviewing the entire collab in its entirety. So, basically, I'm going to try and summarize the strengths and weaknesses of all the cards, as well as giving you an idea of whether or not you should be rolling. So, there are 5 6-stars and then 8 5-star cards possibly available, and unfortunately the collab itself is kind of middling at best with really just one incredible top chase card. It's kind of like Full Metal Alchemist, but on the bright side, at least a couple of the 5-stars do have meaningful amounts of value or merit, so this might possibly give you at least some collateral benefits if you do intend to roll chasing this one particular prize card. Now, regardless of a card's ranking, it's generally a good idea to keep at least one of everything. However, an exception may be made for this event if you roll a 6-star card that is not Yusuke, just because he is so powerful and it may be worth trading out the other ones for him because he just is so overwhelmingly powerful at this point in time. So, just remember, all of the 6-stars here are able to be exchanged through the monster exchange system for another 6-star of your choice. But remember, you need a total of 4 6-star Godfest exclusives or 6-star collab cards in order for that to actually work out. So, this might as well be the entire video almost, because this is really the main focus of this entire collaboration and why a lot of people want to roll. Yusuke's active is basically a bi-elemental board changer, the only one of these 2 colors of light and water, as well as orb unlocking and 1 turn of haste on a 13-turn cooldown. So a 13-turn cooldown, basically, like a regular Sonya board is only 12 turns. So we're basically spending 1 extra turn for all these extra benefits of orb unlocking and haste. So great value right there. His leader skill is basically effectively 2.25 times health and recovery when dual leaders, and 225 times attack when you use light cards and match light and water orbs, as well as achieving 7 or more combos. So his leader skill actually has 3 distinct damaging components. Light attribute cards, which is going to be everyone on your team, of course, 7 or more combos, and light and water. So because of the multi-component aspect, you are able to actually have some form of damage control, which can be meaningful in some content, but the idea is you can blast your way through lots of stuff. And in terms of awakenings, he's got full bind immunity, pretty standard. Double skill boost, quite helpful. Edward only has 1, even though he has skill charge, but it still doesn't help his other team members. He's got skill bind resist, a finger, double 7 combo, which is very desirable, but the big awakening that sets him apart is void damage penetration, or the box awakening. And that's going to make him do spectacular amounts of damage to damage void encounters, because he has 2 offensive awakenings as well as being balance typing, which means he can take any killer latent. So you can basically customize him to your needs, and he can act as a leader or a sub to blow his way through those damage void spawns. And he's very easy to play, very easy to activate. In all honesty, he can possibly even just carry the team by himself. Like, you can have just middle of the road light card subs, and you probably could clear lots of content that you should not normally be able to. And that's very important, especially for a newer player. Even veteran players are going to want to have him. And really, the only big drawback is that, like, he's not a pretty girl if you really care. I guess maybe his lowish weighted stats, and maybe RCB can be a problem if you don't have ideals and Yunas, but again, we're just assuming everyone has all the nice stuff, and those problems are really taken care of for the most part. So basically, he's kind of like the dream character just because he offers so much. Like, the main issue with void damage penetration cards is most of them don't have offensive awakenings, and that is a problem because for the most part, void damage penetration cards are required to basically burst the entire way through a spawn all by themselves. So you usually need to use a bicolor board changer, a burst active, in order to ensure they do enough damage. Now with Yusuke, if you're using double like basically 2 of them as your leaders, you actually have 2 cards with void damage penetrations. That obviously mitigates some of the damage requirements, as well as having double 7 combos, so you're hitting big damage. And he also has the built-in bi-color board changers, so he's basically addressing all the things that a void damage penetration card needs all on his own. I guess the only thing he's really missing is that he does not provide you the team with like damage augmentation like Edward, for instance. But in all honesty, he's doing so much as is. Now, in terms of like his leader skill and leadership potential, he does, like I said, have 2.25 times health, 225 times attack, and 2.25 times recovery. And basically you just need to do light-based cards and light and water combos. Pretty easy, and 7 combos is doable on virtually any board, provided there's not a terribly weird distribution or jammers, poisons exist in weird numbers. So he's going to be very reliable and easy to activate. So we can kind of compare him against Edward, because both of these are top tier incredible leaders. Now, Edward's main benefit is that with skill charge and rainbow activation, you're able to charge up his active faster, so that is a bit of a pro. But Edward has more durability. Damage reduction, especially of his magnitude, is more meaningful than the health multiplier because, well, you can tank hits that you're normally not supposed to. It stacks with shields, so basically enabling yourself to survive massive amounts of damage. But on the drawback of that is that Edward has a lower multiplier. He only has 144 times, whereas Yusuke has 225 times. So this is a big step up in damage. Like, even though 2.25 times health and recovery is still great, obviously the shielding is better, but you have so much more damage. And that can definitely ease your team building because Edward has to manage his health. If he's below half health, he does not have great damage, and that is problematic, of course. Edward also does, to a certain extent, need that skill charge in order to basically hasten up his own personal active. So he is facing a lot of, like, Edward is still great, but he does have a few hurdles to overcome, and his team building requirements can be a little harsher because of that. Whereas Yusuke is a lot more flexible. You don't have to worry about rainbow coverage if you don't have a skill charge card in your team, so that can be meaningful as well. Furthermore, because your damage multiplier is higher, you're able to basically pump out damage and not rely as much on your subs. Obviously subs are still important, but you don't have to rely on them as much. So that is quite meaningful. And while 225 times multiplier is kind of becoming more of the norm, so to speak, because like other popular leaders like say Riku have it, Yusuke's effective damage is much higher, and that is because both leaders have double 7 combo awakenings. And basically with that, that gives him personally an effective damage of 900 times, which is reincarnated Anubis, because reincarnated Anubis has no offensive awakenings. Now, obviously on Anubis teams, if you have any card with 7 combo awakenings, they're going to deal more damage than a Yusuke team. But the thing is, you're not likely going to hit 10 combos on a regular basis on a 6x5 board. So Yusuke has this amazing amount of consistency and this huge amount of damage output. So he has great durability, great damage output, a powerful active skill, and incredible awakenings because he can basically pierce through challenging spawns. So right now at this point in time, 3-player Dragon Rush and Arena 4 is where I can foresee Yusuke excelling in quite phenomenally at this point in time, because in Arena 4 we have basically actually both the dungeons, we have those Dragon Caller spawns which have damage void mechanics, and Yusuke can blow his way through them. So you're basically addressing what is arguably the hardest mechanic in the whole dungeon, and if you can basically ignore or mitigate that, you're gonna have a much easier time. So he is incredible. I know it sounds like I'm hyping him up, but he is just amazing. And you are going to be able to trade for him in the Monster Exchange system, and I will cover that in a separate article and video to give you a bit of idea of whether or not it's worth it, but oftentimes it might very well be worth it. So now everything else is kind of just downhill from here, unfortunately, but I'm still going to go at least touch all the other cards, and it goes quite quickly, especially the 5 stars. So Kurama, I'm bad at pronunciations. They have basically Fire, Jammer, Poison to Wood Orb Changer and 2-turn delay. So you've got a multi-purpose active skill, like you remove hazards, you make Wood Orbs, you also delay enemies. Not too bad overall, but the problem is you're a 6+ connected orb leader, and that obviously makes you orb hungry. On a 6x5 board with a normal distribution, 6 different elements on 30 orbs, that's 5 of each element, you're unlikely to have 6 wood orbs from a given board. And obviously when you're matching things away, you may not necessarily have the right distribution falling down. And the biggest problem with this card is that their damage reduction component is tied to matching 6+ wood orbs. So when you're dealing massive amounts of damage, that's when you have your damage reduction. Not the best when you need to stall to hoard up those orbs. Like, yes, you do have phenomenal amounts of recovery when you connect 4 heart orbs, but the thing is, you still are vulnerable to big hits. You don't have the damage reduction, you have no health multiplier, so you can get smacked around by big hits, and it doesn't matter how good your recovery is if you just get one shot. So that is problematic. Now, one, I guess, point you can consider is that in their unevolved form, they have the same active skill style as unevolved Orochi and Zeta Hydra of 20 turn cooldown delay. Oh, sorry, 5 turn delay on a 20 turn cooldown, but for the most part, most people will probably evolve them, but it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. If you need a stat transferring wood card, that can delay. Oh yeah, and then they do have a health conditional multiplier, so it's like you're juggling so many problematic aspects at the same time. It's just not ideal. I don't know how to pronounce this person's name, but they have 3 times dark attack for a single turn and randomly spawn 9 dark orbs. So that is important because that's basically his active skill solves all of his leader skill activation requirements. You need 9 dark orbs or 3 combos of dark to hit your full multiplier, as well as achieve your damage reduction component. But the problem is you need 9 dark orbs. So I said 6 is already a little challenging to hit. 9 is going to be very hard to hit. But I guess a bit of a saving grace is that their leader skills damage reduction component is tied to matching 6 or more combos. So you can always match 6 or more combos from a given board. But the problem is you can't match those dark because you need to save those dark to deal damage. So it would be great at the beginning, but as your board gets more and more dark orbs, you're going to run into problems. And the thing is, let's say you have 8 dark orbs, you're not going to really hit 6 combos, and that's going to be problematic. So it's going to be challenging to solve them considering they have no health or recovery multiplier, and their damage reduction is basically in that 6 combos when it may not always happen. So that is a little awkward. But I guess the biggest problem with this card is that their awakenings and everything is just kind of wishy-washy, or a melange of all the different things possible. Like, he needs TPA for big damage, but you're already orb hungry enough, so TPA is going to make you even more orb hungry. He wants skill charge, which is kind of weird in a way. Like your mono dark team, it may be a little tough to accommodate all the different colors possible. And he does make 9 dark orbs, but he doesn't have the void damage penetration awakening, which is kind of unusual. Like, he has the perfect active skill for it. You make enough orbs for the box, you give the damage boosting component, but you don't actually have the awakening itself. So I feel like he could have been better if he at least had void damage penetration, but unfortunately that is not the case. Ryzen should be B. I don't know why it doesn't say it there, but they changed the leftmost column into hard orbs and basically deal 200 times light damage to a single enemy in exchange to reducing their health to 1. So this is quite important because it's good for buttoning, because 200 times damage is quite significant. It's a reasonably high amount of damage. It's still less than Grimjaw, who is 250% times, 250%, but it's still reasonable. But the main benefit of this active skill is that it nukes your health to 1. And with that health being reset to 1, this can be kind of a blessing because Grimjaws are now dealing their maximum amounts of damage. So you combine the button and possible damage aspect as well as the health reset all in one active on a short cooldown. So that is meaningful. But the problem is he doesn't have a co-op boost awakening, so you have to inherit him on someone else. So that is a bit of a drawback, but that's like most button cards, to be honest, as well. But the thing is, it's going to be awkward to use him overall on a traditional team because a traditional team is not really going to want to have this health nuking aspect. Like, sure, you spawn a column of hard orbs for a follow-up attack, but the Valentine's Day chocolate box is much better at it because you don't nuke your own health. So he's mostly just a luxury button card. And in all honesty, if you have all the cards in the game, you may only want one Ryzen because Grimjaws do more damage. You would use Ryzen to reset your health and deal damage, and then Grimjaw your way to victory. So it's an option, but it's not as amazing overall. Sensui, hopefully that's how you say his name, is the next best 6-star card in the event. They active skills on a 4-turn cooldown, which is very short, so great for inheriting over top. It causes no Skyfall combos for 2 turns and randomly spawns 6 Dark Orbs. So good for damage control, but more so the short cooldown to easily inherit something over top of it. Leader skill is basically Kusanagi Hime, but for attacker cards. The exact same requirements for their damage scaling component. They have the same health, but they actually have a 2.25 times recovery aspect. So that is meaningful because attackers tend to have bad recovery, so this kind of help compensates it out. So you're basically playing an attacker-style Kusanagi Hime with a much shorter base cooldown to inherit something over top. So he can be powerful, he can be meaningful, but the biggest drawback is that no Skyfall leaders, for the most part, suffer from a lack of damage. Like, being able to Skyfall your way into more damage is quite meaningful because you can get lucky. Like, what if you have a given board that has only 7 combos? Your multiplier is not going to be that high. But if you're playing another leader, you might have 7 and then Skyfall your way to 9. Suddenly you have big damage. But it's not the case with this character here. So he's obviously a pure skill leader, but the thing is, it can be a little problematic because you're kind of capping your damage, and having damage control was great a year plus ago maybe, but nowadays when we have follow-up attack, damage void penetration, and Fujin style active skills, we have so many solutions, and the current meta is more so about just blasting hard and killing things and just having these awakenings or active skills address these mechanics otherwise. So it's still a strong leader, and the nice thing is they actually do have much better offensive awakenings. They have double 7 combo and guard break, so they are pumping out more damage than Kusanagi Hime, which is meaningful. But again, well, you are kind of limiting your damage output overall, but I'd still think he'd be a fun leader. He definitely can clear lots of content, will definitely be very suitable for Arena 3 style stuff, because Kusanagi Hime is good at Arena 3. I don't see why this character wouldn't be either. And one last thing I want to point out is that they can kind of act like a Dark Kali replacement for teams that want to use guard break with a double 7 combo awakening card. He trades out some awakenings but have most of the similar ones for the overall, but you have a shorter base cooldown, which can be meaningful because you may not always want Dark Kali's board changer. So now we come to the 5-star cards, and for the most part, some of them are pretty bad. I'm not going to say your name because you're pretty trash. You do 100,000 damage to one enemy. Cool. So it's one enemy. 100,000 damage is not enough to execute things for button farming. You can't kill all the pre-draws, you can't kill all the Ps, so you're leaving yourself vulnerable for the most part. So it's not the greatest active overall. Second column from the left to light, second column from the right to light orbs. Sure, not that great still. So we're not going to use him as an inherit. We're definitely not going to use him as a sub. Sure, he's a budget guard break, but that's really budget. And for the most part, if you do have stronger multiplier cards, you can often just punch through high defense spawns anyways. Like, guard break is only really meaningful in something like, say, Alt Arena, where there are spawns with, like, stupidly high amounts of defense. I guess Arena 4 has the Sylph with 15 million. So, like, there are situations where guard break can be meaningful when it might be hard to punch that hard. But overall, no, not in this card. You're not going to run them as a sub, really. Genkai, again, pretty garbage card overall, unfortunately. It gives you 2.5 times attack for water and light for one turn. So you're like basically a Norse god, but only for one turn. You do have the ability to change the leftmost column to water and rightmost to light. But the thing is, with those 5 orbs, they're not going to help you produce that many more combos. Double rows are much better at producing combos because you can hit 7 combos from a board. Like, you make the whole board one color, double row active, you can make 7 combos or something. You can make a much more combo heavy board overall. So it's not accomplishing much. So, like, you don't really want either component. So you're not going to use them as an inherit. You're not going to use them as a sub, really. So I don't see a real point in this card really existing overall, in all honesty. But on that note, we have a much more powerful 5-star card. We have something I can't pronounce once again. So their active skill is Bind Recovery for 4 turns, as well as Awoken Bind Recovery for 4 turns. Pretty nice overall. And then 50% damage reduction for 3 turns. That is really nice. So this is basically just a stellar inherit. Like, it's basically going to be a great inherit. It can transfer stats to water-based cards. And the fact that it's giving a shield and Awoken and Bind Clearing is very meaningful. Like, Odin Dragon is still the king of Bind and Awoken Bind Clearing, but not everyone wants to use an Odin Dragon on every team, possibly, or maybe not necessarily that active skill, so on and so forth. And this active here does accomplish several key aspects. You obviously have the bind clearing capabilities and Awoken bind clearing, but you have the shielding component. So even if you don't need to bind clear, the shield is almost always going to be valuable. So the fact that you combine 2 valuable aspects into one is quite meaningful. And in content like, say, Arena 4, where there's a lot of Awoken binds, not necessarily super long ones like Alt Arena, but like sporadic sprinklings of Awoken binds, this might be a great solution. Like, there are dungeons where you get Awoken skill bound, and then there's a preemptive on the following floor in Arena 4. Well, you can clear the Awoken binds and tank that preemptive better. So this can definitely solve a lot of your problems. And in all honesty, the active skill cooldown is only 14 turns, which is pretty good value. If you look at Susanoo, it's 11 turns for the same shielding component with 1 turn haste. So you're basically paying 3 turns more cooldown for the Awoken and bind clearing potential. So I think this is actually quite a phenomenal card to have as an inherit. And if I rolled a 5-star, I would be pretty happy at least getting this card because it does have value and meaning at this point in time. This is another D rank card. I don't know why it's not showing, but basically he's pretty terrible. Like, he has 100% defense break, Okay, we've explained that guard break is a better option, or just leader skills of higher multipliers, so we don't really need the defense break. And then orb unlocking. So you're basically combining two kind of strange mechanics in one, and neither of them are that great on their own. They usually want to have a nicer secondary effect, but unfortunately that is not the case. The only situation where I can foresee this actually having real value is against like Dark Metatron in 3-player or Altarina, where they preemptively lock your board and have 20 million defense. Again, pretty situational. You can take one turn to basically clear off the locked orbs and then board change Dark Metatron. Like, there are lots of other solutions, and it's not justifiable to really bring this one card. Maybe if there's a short dungeon where there's a Dark Metatron appearing, maybe then it could be worthwhile. But again, that's super situational and so niche. In all honesty, there are so many better options out there. So, not a good card overall. Botan is cute, but unfortunately not that great, but not as bad as other ones. Remember, it's garbage can. So their active skill is +2 combo count for 1 turn, and then avoid all dark damage for 1 turn. So only one color can void damage from, and +2 combo count. And it's on a very long 15-turn cooldown. Most +2 combo count active skills are on a shorter cooldown and generally have a much more beneficial secondary effect. So they have a longer cooldown and a worse secondary effect because you only can void damage against basically effectively 20% of the spawns in the game, assuming there's an even color distribution, so that's not that great. The cooldown's quite long. So if we want a +2 combo count active, we usually go with, like, say, unevolved Oichi and Nene, who have like a board changer, or we use Mary, or we use I can't pronounce the name. It's the red former 6-star Godfest exclusive. But the point is, there are lots of other +2 combo count active skills that have better secondary effects. So Botan is just kind of getting outclassed there. If you want full damage void, or full damage void, basically, you want to go with something like Ganesha, who has a shorter cooldown. So they're just too long of a cooldown to be used effectively, but it's still better than some of the other 5 stars. Now we come to Chu. So Chu is actually quite desirable for people who love button farming. Their active skill recovers 50% of your max health, and then it inflicts a light nuke damage equal to your team's water and wood attack times 40. So basically it's the same damaging aspect compared to Nergigante Hunter from the Monster Hunter collab. So if you have a team of lots of water and or wood cards with co-op boost awakenings, you can deal meaningful amounts of button damage. But the problem is Chu does not have the co-op boost himself, so you have to inherit him onto other cards. So you need to have Chu and you need to have a strong co-op boost awakening card. So lots of things have to go right, unfortunately, for him to work out. And that is problematic because Nergigante Hunter already has co-op boost built in, so he's already at a bit of disadvantage for Chu. And the fact that you have to inherit him means you need more skill boost, which can put more strain or stress on your partner's team depending on what they have available. So it's still definitely a very viable button option, and the healing component can be meaningful on, say, Zeus Verse teams. If you're button farming with Zeus Verse and you need to like match at some point, you want to be back to full health, Chu can solve that problem. But again, that healing aspect basically kind of ruins Machine Goemon and Dark Metatron style teams, or if you're using Grimjaws and Vitras who need to be at 1 health. So things can, it can go great or it can go badly. So he's kind of situational. Well, all buttons are situational, but this one feels even more situational overall. Jin changes the top and bottom row to wood orbs. So as I explained before, having the ability to change into rows is much more meaningful than columns because you can rearrange the board into an 18-12 distribution for much more combos, or fitting in a Box Awakening and 7 combos. So great for Amun, great for Pixels, that sort of thing. So it is still useful, but the problem is the wood being spawned is less desirable than fire because fire has much better farming team capabilities overall. So Jin is just giving wood, which is not as nice. It still can be good, but not as amazing because we don't have a wood card like Yamamoto who can use 1 red row and blow things up. So it's a little harder to use him as Jin as effectively, but it's still worth mentioning that you can make a full board changer of not wood and then use the 2 wood rows and rearrange into the pattern of your choice. One interesting thing is that Jin comes with a natural Cloud Resist Awakening, and it's the only card in North America that does so. There's a Persona collab card that does it as well, but right now this is the only card in North America. Probably not going to use it, but again, if you're playing co-op, this is the only way to get a Cloud Resist Awakening because Super Awakenings are disabled in co-op. And last, and kind of ish least, is Karasu. They have a 7-turn board changer, which is very low cooldown, that produces Fire, Dark, and Jammer Orbs. So the Jammer Orbs make the cooldown less, but obviously you have Jammer Orbs, which are quite bad for the most part. Like Jammer style leader skills are not that popular. Like they're almost more memes, to be honest. Like, they can clear content, but they require so much more effort, and they're much more tedious by comparison, so they're not as desirable. So, like, if you are running a jammer-based leader, obviously this will be a nice board changer. Like, Purple Fenrir would probably love this style active skill quite a lot. So, outside of that, really hard to justify using it as an inherit anywhere else, but at least 7-turn cooldown means you can use them as a sub, which is the only 5-star card you might want to use as a sub, and inherit something over top of it. And their awakenings have 2 machine killers, which means they have 9 times personal damage against machine type spawns. So that is definitely meaningful. But the drawback is it's only 2 killer awakenings. They cannot equip machine killer latent, so your damage is somewhat capped. And so it may be hard to really justify using them as a sub because there's no skill boost, and it can be a little challenging overall to accommodate him on a team. So it still can be a useful card. It might be helpful to help you push through certain content, but overall, it's still quite niche for the most part. So in conclusion, this basically Yusuke collab is quite exciting overall, just because we are gaining access to what is arguably one of the best leaders in the entire game. Now, remember, you can trade for him through the monster exchange system, but again, I'll cover that in a separate article. The rest of the collab overall is kind of below average comparing to, say, like the other flashier stuff, like obviously the 10-stone ones like Dragonbound, Dragoncaller, and Heroine and Monster Hunter, but it has one incredible top prize card like Full Metal Alchemist. So, in all honesty, it may just be better to use your free rank 50 roll. Maybe if you like, you can buy the $1 US IAP bundle for another roll, and then probably just exchange for them through the trading post system, because that's probably gonna be a much more efficient way to use your stones, because for the most part, the other cards, you can live without them in all honesty. Like, you don't really need them. Like, there's not that much value elsewhere in the collab. So that's what I'm probably gonna do. Like, I'm just gonna use my rank 50 roll and then trade in for him. So let me know what you plan to do in this collab. Do you plan to trade in for Yusuke? And if so, what do you plan on sacrificing? Or do you plan actually rolling in the collab because you may like the cards and the overall universe for the most part? So hopefully you all have a fantastic day. I wish you all the best of luck in your own pad adventures. And happy puzzling.